If slavery never happened, probably they might have been in Africa. They say that they are not. They are not Africans, and they're not tied with Africans. So even in the United States, we have two groups. We have Black Americans and we have Africans. We have African Americans who want to be called African Americans. If you say they're Black Americans, they won't agree with you. We also have Black Americans that don't want to be called African Americans. And if you say African Americans, they'll say, no, I'm not African, So we Africans, we are obliged to take our time. We are obliged to understand each other's history. Now, most of Africans do ask this question. African Americans want us to understand their history. Are they doing the same with us? That's the question that I would also like to pose to African Americans. Are they trying to understand African history? Because this is their root. Perhaps Africans could have the excuse of saying that, we are Africans and I don't need to learn African American history. But for an African American, they will say that, I need to understand African history because these are my roots. This is the place where I come from, So, to be fair, it would be right to say both Africans and African Americans need to take their time to understand each other's history.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name is Maureen.
And I'm Maren.
Yeah, so picture this. African Americans tend to believe that African people hate them. That's why we are in the streets of Nairobi today and we're going to be investigating whether this statement is true.
Yeah, we are going to be asking Africans themselves and you'll get to hear from their mouth. Do they hate Black Americans?
So come with us, let's go find out.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How about you?
I'm very fine. So today, I don't think you need any introduction, but I want you to introduce yourself for the sake of the topic we are going to be talking about.
My name is Eugene. My name is Eugene, and I'm a content creator. I do content regarding Africans, African Americans. Yeah.
So today I wanted to talk to you about the statement. Do you think Africans hate African Americans? Because it has been coming up a lot on the internet.
Interesting question. So Africans hating on African Americans, I don't think it's true. Yeah, I don't think it's true. Africans don't hate African Americans. The reason why I'll say this, first we need to know that Africa has 54 countries. So when a person has experienced the one person in Africa, it is not all African, Just like any other society, we have good people and bad people. So if I am an African and I go to the United States and I find I have bad encounter with an African American, I won't say that African Americans are bad people. Rather, I would say that I met an African American who did A, B, C, D to me, So one thing I would like to say that I've interacted with African Americans and they have also interacted with me as a person, and I would say that I don't think the narrative that we hate on each other is true. The only problem that we Africans and the people from the African diaspora, the African Americans, is that we haven't taken our time to understand each other's history. We haven't taken our time to understand about each other. It takes a tango for it to work. So we Africans, we are obliged as people from the Black community, as people from the African fraternity, we need to know much about each other, and it starts from there, because you realize even what we say that it is diaspora wars are not diaspora wars. These are just little misunderstandings that we have and generalization that some Africans or some African Americans have towards Africans or African Americans. And as I said earlier, you find that an African American comes to, for example, Kenya, and they have a bad experience, And the reason why I insist that Africa has 54 countries. If you went to Kenya, say that I went to Kenya and somebody in Kenya did this to me, not Africans, Yeah, because we Africans, we record an history of one of the most welcoming people, We are one of the most welcoming people in as much as people don't welcome us in their countries. But people who come to Africa, we always tell you that we are the most welcoming. So tell me why will we be so welcoming and we hate on other Black people who look like us, that we know historically they came from Africa. It is not their liking that they were taken from Africa. If slavery never happened, probably they might have been in Africa. Of course, there's a narrative that people say that we have African Americans who had already been in the United States. The Red Indians were the true indigenous of the United States. So before, so when the Red Indians were the indigenous of the United States, they had a family of black people. They call themselves the Black Cherokees. So they say that they're not. They are not Africans, and they're not tied with Africans. So even in the United States, we have two groups. We have Black Americans and we have Africans. We have African Americans who want to be called African Americans. If you say they're Black Americans, they won't agree with you. We also have Black Americans that don't want to be called African Americans. And if you say African Americans, they'll say, no, I'm not African, So we Africans, we are obliged to take our time. We are obliged to understand each other's history. Now, most of Africans do ask this question. African Americans want us to understand their history. Are they doing the same with us? That's the question that I would also like to pose to African Americans. Are they trying to understand African history? Because this is their root. Perhaps Africans could have the excuse of saying that, we are Africans and I don't need to learn African American history. But for an African American, they will say that, I need to understand African history because these are my roots. This is the place where I come from, So, to be fair, it would be right to say both Africans and African Americans need to take their time to understand each other's history because it is important. And we complement each other in different ways because you find that during the early 1960s, not even 1960, early 1940s, we have people like Marcus Garvey. Not even 90s, it was in around 80s those years. People like Marcus Garvey who fought for the black people. We have people like Julius Nyerere in Tanzania who also talked with those people. And you see that integration that we as black people from the black community. So this means that we need to understand each other's language, we need to understand each other's culture, we need to understand each other's history. Personally, I do take my time sometimes. I don't know. I can't say that I know much about the Black American history, but I take a little time to try to understand their history. Yeah. So that's what I can say. We don't hate on each other. The only thing we need to do, we need to understand each other's culture. We need to understand each other's history, and then from there, we'll find the problems that we are facing as generally black people.
So there's an important point that you mentioned that I'll take away from. It's important to note what you've said. In America or abroad, there are two types of blacks. There's the Black American who wants to be called Black American, and there's the African American who wants to be called African American, right? Yeah. So it's important we take note of that. So another question I'm going to ask you is, why do you think African Americans or Black Americans, let me use Black Americans, why do you think Black Americans feel that Africans don't like them?
The internet has a lot of things, and it is today the source of information from everyone, So they feel like we hate on them because they've had only one side of the story. Now, how will I say it? I'll do a reference from what a Nigerian United States-based writer. Do you know Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie? So Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, in one of his speeches, says that there is always a problem with one side of the story. Remember I told you earlier that if you come to Africa, you have bad experience. You need to deal with person as an individual, You should not put people in an umbrella term. If you come to Africa and have bad experience with an African, say that I went to Africa and I had bad experience with an African. But generally Africans are good people, Another thing as to why African Americans or Black Americans feel that Africans hate on them is that most of them haven't taken their time to come to Africa to see these stereotypes that people say about Africans by themselves. They need to, you don't have to come to stay to Africa, you don't have to live in Africa. Of course, we have a number of group of people who want to come and live in Africa. So if you're a person who want to, find out the truth, and you feel like it is important for you, I will encourage you to move from the United States and then come to Africa and see it for yourself. Yeah, because one side of the story, it's not enough. Yeah.
So it's important that you've mentioned that, and because this is an educative segment, we want the African Americans who are watching this to learn as much as they can from it. So the next question I'm going to ask you, which country do you think is the most welcoming to African Americans or Black Americans, and which country would you advise them to visit in Africa?
So first, we have different things that African Americans are looking in Africa. So everyone have their own choice, and I believe they normally watch these things on YouTube. They do their research. So for an African American, they know what they want in different countries. I'm starting to do much about African geopolitics, so which makes me have at least something to say about a place where an African American might want to go. So for example, an African American who wants to reconnect, history has it that it is in the western part of Africa where mostly slavery was so predominant as compared to the eastern part of Africa, because most of us who are in the Arab thing happened in East Africa and the West Africa, it's where slavery took place big time. So I will advise them to go to Ghana for a person who is looking to reconnect with their roots, their motherland. So we have Ghana, we have Senegal, we have Nigeria, we have Gambia. So they need to, go to those places. And we have countries which are now developing, countries which are promising in the future in Africa. If you're a person who wants to invest in business or something, I'll advise you to go to South Africa, Kenya. I'll advise you to go to Uganda. Yeah, because these are countries which have a promising future. But in a nutshell, generally Africa itself has a bright future. That's why I will encourage you. So personally, it comes from a personal perspective, as a person, how they feel, because I believe at some point they have done their research, some things that they are going. So you'll find today most of African Americans know where they are going to. Yeah, because they have taken their time on social media. They have talked to different experts who are in Africa, and they know what they want, Yeah, so that was just what I have to say. But if you're a person, as I've said earlier, if you're a person who is looking to do business in Africa, invest in Africa, I'll advise you to come to East Africa. Okay. Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you taking your time to talk to us and our audience.
Thank you for having me.